Well, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has signed a decree that puts Kyiv on track to leave an international treaty that bans the use of landmines. He says Russia was never a signatory to the treaty and has deployed landmines extensively in its war against Ukraine. The treaty, known as the Ottawa Convention, dates back to 1997 and bans countries from acquiring and using landmines, which pose long-term risks for civilians. Let's bring in Filipa Schmitz Guinote. She's head of advocacy at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Ukraine says it needs to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention to defend itself in the face of Russian aggression. How does that argument hold up?
This is an argument that's been put forward by a number of states who have recently announced their intention to withdraw from the Ottawa Treaty. The rationale being that when they signed on to that treaty, the situation was very different, and the risk calculus today has changed, and the use of anti-personnel mines would allow them to compensate an asymmetry on the battlefield when confronted with an enemy that uses them extensively. So this is the argument that's put forward. Landmines allow forces to slow down the advance of the enemy and to hold on to territory that is being recaptured. So that is the argument. The risk calculus has changed from when those countries signed.
On the other hand, one thing that hasn't changed, according to Amnesty International, is that the use of landmines can have devastating effects on civilians decades after they're deployed. That can't be avoided, can it?
Well, the traditional landmines are unexploded ordnance. They are concealed in fields, on land, and they detonate on contact by an individual. So inevitably, by design, they have an indiscriminate impact. They kill and maim soldiers as well as civilians. In fact, civilians make up for the large majority of casualties linked to landmines. They also contaminate agricultural land and the natural habitat for years after. They are difficult to clear. It's a complex operation, and they're also an obstacle for the extraction of minerals. So, for instance, in Ukraine, about half of the rare earth minerals are located in areas under Russian control, so highly contaminated. So these are short-term and long-term impacts on civilians and on the economy and reconstruction of a country.
But in your opinion, that doesn't outweigh the immediate threat that Russia poses to Ukraine?
This is the risk calculus that states have to do. Recently, there is development or investments in developing of so-called smart landmines. These are landmines that reduce by design, or are intended to reduce by design, the risk for civilians. For instance, by being detonated remotely on visual contact, so being operated by an individual, or by having an embedded self-destruction system. So these are part of the efforts that signatories and non-signatory states to the Ottawa Convention are making to develop landmines that can have that ability to help a force compensate the asymmetry on the battlefield, but at the same time reduce civilian risk. These have been criticized as well by international human rights and humanitarian groups because they have a failure rate and because there's a discussion about whether they in effect water down the protective effect of international law on these weapons.
And Ukraine's not the only country to withdraw from the treaty. Other neighbours in the Baltic area are making similar moves. How do you see the bigger picture given this trend?
Indeed, this has been a trend over the past year with Baltic states as well as Finland and Poland having announced their intention and being on track to withdraw from the Ottawa Treaty. Lithuania has also withdrawn from the Cluster Munitions Treaty, another one of the handful of humanitarian disarmament treaties that exist at the moment. Ukraine had ratified the Ottawa Convention on landmines in 2005. It's endured survived over 3 years of war while remaining a signatory. And so the fact that it's decided now to move towards withdrawal is indissociable from the fact that other countries in NATO's eastern flank have made that move, in effect breaking the stigma around the use of those weapons. One point to note is that unlike other countries in Europe that have made this move, Ukraine is at war, and so that means that the withdrawal, according to Article 20 of the Ottawa Convention, would only take effect after the war ends.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis, Filipa Schmitz Guinote. Thank you for being on DW.
Thanks for having me.